All right, everyone, thanks so much for coming to our first office hour sort of run through event. We want to keep this kind of fun and casual, but with a good intention. So we're really here to just kind of welcome you in. Our first topic, since we're on 10K Copies platform, is networking. Is it hard or is it not? Or is it? How do we say that?
Networking's hard, or is it?
Or is it? Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So for about the next 40 minutes or so, we'll max till 2 p.m. Lacey and I are here just to share some of our ideas and experiences. Maybe I'll just start off just letting you with some of the ground rules, and then we're both just going to let a bit of know about who each of us are. Just a few things, please type in the chat. You are muted right now, but your chat is available. And anytime you have an idea or want to share a story or say, I agree with that, what's this, just type it as we go. I know Lacey and I are very, we come with purpose. So we want to make sure that we are answering some of the questions you have. We will leave some time at the end, but I really encourage you to think of some stories of networking, good or bad, that maybe you'd want to share with us, because we're going to be sharing some stories as well. So Lacey, anything else we need to say there?
No, I don't think so. I think just one last reminder for anyone who maybe joined us in the last couple minutes. If you do require ASL interpretation, please hover over the name Melanie. Last name Melanie Ridgway so that you can pin the video for the interpreter and be able to follow along throughout the rest of the event. So I think other than that, just please do engage with us. We want this to be as conversational and back and forth as possible. We don't want this to feel very lecture style. This is just some folks chatting about our experiences, sharing learning moments, sharing suggestions and tips, and just trying to feel a little bit more comfortable about this thing that we're all told that we have to do, but maybe need a little bit more practical guidance and support on what that looks like for you, because the way that everyone networks is a little bit different. And we're going to go into a little bit more of what that looks like, even between the two of us. And you can share again what that looks like for you in the chat too.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and you're going to probably hear different perspectives from us. One thing I always think years ago, before I was working in this industry, the word networking. I imagined like business tie, suits, handshaking, and all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I've realized the word, we get an idea of what the word is, but really we're always networking and we're always trying to find opportunities. And we might see those in a few different ways. When I think of, my networking approach, it's very usually conversational. I don't know that I'm usually networking, but I'm always ready. So I'm really trying to find opportunities that aren't like intentional networking events, because I find, you can get different answers, different information that way. Just a bit of a background about myself, just in case anyone hasn't met me yet. So my name is Calvin. I am one of the career advisors, currently looking after the CCET programs, but I've also looked after fashion, community services. I've worked at all the campuses. And I really
you've been everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. And I really love my job. Especially this past year, meeting with students and trying to help provide them with opportunities to connect with other people. It really drives me to want to make sure we're getting those types of connections to help get you closer to an opportunity. Again, my networking approach, I don't really know I'm doing it. I'm really just interested in getting to know people and interested in getting them to know me. So that's a little bit, we'll break it down a bit further, but Lacey, maybe you can just let us know about you.
Yeah, so I am also a career advisor. I've worked at two of the campuses. I work at Casa Loma, so I also worked with the construction and trades and computer science programs. I'm also now working much more closely with the business programs and a little bit of everything now that we're remote. So it's hard for me to say who I work with, because now we sort of just work with everyone in this virtual environment. In terms of the way that I network, I am very introverted by nature. I'm a recovering extremely awkward person, and sometimes I still don't crush it, right? So when it comes to networking, like I much prefer opting for like one-on-one conversations or small group events over the large ones. That's not to say I don't go to them. I still attend HRPA every year. As somebody, my educational background is in HR. I did just enough recruitment to realize that I never wanted to do recruitment again, but I do enjoy the process of demystifying recruitment for students and job seekers to help them get a sense of like, what is it they want from me? Because that is such a big question in job search. So that's how I approach this work and how I approach networking for myself. I really do enjoy or feel that I thrive best when I'm in smaller environments. And there are certain things even within those larger events that I attend to get more one-on-one opportunity, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in terms of networking, that's really the position that I come at it from, is not really so much going into a large group of people and just immersing myself in the conversation, because to me that sounds terrifying. So if that sounds like you, we're in the same boat. So maybe if that sounds like you, we can chat more about it, but let us know in the chat if that does sound like you.
Yeah, and again, feel free to type chat so we know you're engaged and listening at point. Tan says she can 100% relate to the smaller spaces. I just always find that the best results I've ever had with networking are like in opportunities I never expected it. So that like it's always coming with that bit of intention. And I think
Mhm.
one thing we were discussing that's really important before we did this presentation for you or this conversation is really being genuine. And that's like I think one of the key things when I talk with students, they're like, well, what should I say, how should I say it? I said, be yourself with a good intention. But really it's kind of being that genuine approach. It's really important. And Lacey, we went into that one situation which we've laughed about because we said we're going to go networking, and
Oh.
you and I, we went to the home show, and we're like, we're going to
Yep.
network, we're going to do this, let's do it. We were at this trade show event, and we went, and it was awkward. I don't think we felt ourselves.
Mhm.
And really, what was happening is we were going up to these booths saying, I'm going to network. And then they were trying to sell us stuff. And we just kept doing it like 6, 7 times. And it was just like, okay, so one, we're not in the right spot to be networking. Two, maybe this isn't the perfect environment.
Yeah.
So
I think so. In some cases, you and I have been to similar events where like there was more of a network opportunity, whereas this one was like strictly trade show. So those people were not there to chat with everybody who came up to their booth. They were there to
to
try
sell.
and get customers for their products. And our expectation was like there was probably going to be, because of the way it had been promoted us to us, was that there was going to be some kind of opportunity to network. And we went in with it with like, we're gonna have some great folks to maybe introduce to students, and we had these great ideas, and then we got there and we are like
No.
ooh.
Anyways,
Not ideal.
again, you and I, we both are of the mind, well, we're going to make it work for us
Yep.
somehow. So we went around and we found certain employers and we gathered up their contact information for a later
Yep.
date. So that was
Yes,
kind of how
yes.
we did that. So, being genuine, we weren't able to be at the same level where we wanted to be in that. So when we talk about genuine approach, it's just being yourself. But a lot of people always say like, well, what should I be saying? Um, we speak about this because we thought it was a networking event, and it kind of wasn't. Maybe if we were students, it might have landed differently. But there are these certain formal type networking events, and so I thought maybe we could just talk a bit about um, what those are like. Maybe share some stories,
Mhm.
and maybe some ways that you could really get a lot out of a formal type event.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at those formal events, we're talking about things like career fairs, professional association events like the HRPA conference that happens once a year, the home show, if it had more of a professional networking event to it. I think there's a couple other events that you attended later on that were a little bit more on the connection side of things. But within all lines of business and different professions, there's usually some kind of like membership or community that hosts events where folks can get together and network and build build their network out. So those kinds of events where you can go and seek out mentorship or networking opportunities um, that are at a set time with a set focus, with a very particular attendee list, let's say. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we say like formal networking events. They're usually fairly structured. They have an agenda oftentimes, or there's a certain way you're meant to navigate that space.
Yeah, and fully agree with you there. So these are the ones where you're like, okay, I know that at some point I'm going to have to step out of my comfort zone and do some networking and meeting people. And that could
Mhm,
be anything from like a seminar, that's a like-minded people in an industry.
mhm,
Um, Again, a lot of times when I talk to students, when you go to a networking event like a career fair, they're really busy. They're really fast, and I've spoken to students like, well, I didn't get enough information, or when it's a busier, bigger environment like that, you want to find the certain opportunities and get that contact information so you can follow up at a later date.
mhm, mhm.
But there are other ways, these sort of formal type networking or seminar things that you can get some good results. And I know, Lacey, you wanted to share one of the stories personally about you and what led from a networking moment to an opportunity. Why don't you share that?
So I will share that. I think one thing I wanted to bring up first was what you had just mentioned about like how you approach these things and how that kind of also kind of tying that back into our previous story. So when I was first going to HRPA events for myself when I was trying to get to know my community, I would go to those events and sort of open my pitch as like, here's who I am, here's the program I'm taking, and here's who I'm looking to connect with. And so if you're in a situation where like you're not quite there yet, really switching it around to, and here's what I'm looking to learn about from the companies who are here today, or here's the types of companies I'm interested in learning more about, and approaching those events from a professional curiosity standpoint rather than I have to network and just having that word kind of flashing in your brain. If you come at it from that perspective of professional curiosity, the questions tend to kind of flow a little bit easier. So as you're pitching yourself, you maybe introduce a little bit about your program and then mention, so today I'm really interested in learning more about companies that work on this particular challenge, or I'm looking at companies who are, using technology in new and interesting ways. Go into it with what you're curious about and what you want to learn more about, and that will help the conversation kind of go on.
Okay. Uh, Agree with you there.
So in terms of the story that I had in mind for how networking wound up leading me to my second co-op, I had set up a formal meeting with the then director of the Diversity, Equity, Human Rights Office at George Brown because I was at the time a peer coach with Peer Connect, and I was writing a workshop on accessible communication and creating accessible documents, and I wanted to get a subject matter expert's opinion about the content that I had, if there was anything kind of really missing from that. And so I was going into this conversation just as a like, is this okay? But what wound up happening from that conversation was, she was really interested in the fact that I, as a HR student, was so focused on this particular subject matter. And so our after we went over, the workshop content, our most of our conversation deviated from that and just talking about accessibility in general, what my interests were. She started asking those pointed questions about, when are you graduating? And it eventually rolled into, well, I'm not graduating for another year from now, but I am looking for my next co-op. Um, and resulting from that, they had never had a co-op student before. They created one for me and dipped into their budget to pay me for that co-op. And I think they have continued to have co-op students after that because they were able to get, some additional support and provide learning to George Brown students, which, they really enjoyed doing. And so it was a really great mutual payoff. But that was an opportunity I wouldn't necessarily have had if I hadn't, reached out to this person and kind of networked a little bit in that moment. To lead to that opportunity. So we talk a lot in classes and with students about the importance of networking and the importance of informational interviews. That's an example of using an informational interview to get information that wound up leading to a really great opportunity that I still reference to this day in terms of my professional development.
And awesome. And so, Lacey, what a good example there. As you said in the beginning, you're like, I prefer smaller type things, one-on-ones. So
Hmm.
for you, that really worked to get an informational interview,
Hmm.
and it led to opportunities.
Hmm.
We say this a lot in our workshops.
Hmm.
Do informational interviews if you can. I know sometimes there's hurdles getting the right people's attention, but you want to keep trying and finding ways to find those opportunities. And the
Hmm.
reason why these are great, again, just to go off your story, I'm going to share a story of a student that I worked with.
Hmm.
Great student, went to a design event. So it was just a seminar that they went to, and the person presenting worked for a certain architecture firm, and they were fascinated with their presentation. So the student reached out after and said, "Oh, I was really interested." I said, "Go reach out to them,
Hmm.
send a message, say you were really interested in the seminar," which ended up them communicating back and forth. Because of course, if you tell someone you loved the information they shared, they're going to feel appreciated and maybe want to talk more about it.
Hmm.
So finding those connections or what you're interested in. Um, Anyways, they had a few communications, again, ended up in an informational interview, and then was invited to go have a tour of the office. And that was in 2018, so near the beginning of their program, and just had an interview this week as they're graduating soon. So just had an interview at that place. So 2 years later,
Amazing.
had planted the seed and made those good impressions that they got an interview. So, it's not always even in the moment that you're getting the result. And that's why it's so key to connect with people in your industry.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
when you go to these formal events, uh, these are people in your industry, they're future colleagues or future bosses, or you might be their future boss. Just talk to them as if you're in the same industry. And, even though you're learning, say, if you're a student, you will get so much information if you, as you said, come with that intent or curiosity.
Hmm.
Sounded like
Hmm.
you were going to add on to that.
I think all I was thinking of adding to that is it can sometimes for folks who are new to networking to feel like they have to own and lead the conversation. And one of the tricks that I was taught as somebody starting to network and wanting to do that effectively and take a bit of that pressure off is don't feel obligated to talk about yourself all the time. Some of the best ways to get a great conversation going is to have some really great questions prepared of, throwing the attention back onto the other person. Obviously, you want to be able to answer questions about yourself, but being able to turn from your pitch to what brought you here today? What guest speakers are you looking forward to hearing from? Or, who are you looking to connect with, at your booth today? Throwing that attention back onto them to keep that conversation going helps you feel less pressure, but also, as you said, that learning that you would get from them answering the questions allows you to follow up with them, allows you to maybe send an article related to what they talked about. And those are the communications afterwards that help you to strengthen that contact moving forward. So that when eventually you are perhaps job searching or looking for a mentor, you've built up enough of that rapport that you can start asking for things like that. We talk a lot about with networking, one of the big mistakes people make is kind of asking for too much too soon. And really it's because they haven't done enough of the work yet to establish that relationship. So when you're asking questions and learning more about them, you have more opportunity to add value back by sharing what you have learned, sharing resources that you've seen or come across your LinkedIn, for example, right? And being able to bring that value to them so that there is that reciprocity.
Awesome. Yeah. And you know what I mean? I think that's the one thing, even if it's formal or informal type events, it's what happens after, and I think that's the one thing when
Yeah,
I talk to a lot of students, they're like, what should I say? How do I make the impression?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's a
it's what happens.
stepping stone.
Yeah, it is that stepping stone. And so you don't need to put so much pressure when you first meet someone. You're just getting to know and ask questions, finding
Hmm.
out if a company does do co-op, showing your
Hmm.
appreciation for someone answering your questions. Speaking of questions, I just saw someone in the chat. Carlos says, in this digital environment we are living in right now, what are the best ways to start a conversation? It's a great question. As you all know, most of us are working and studying behind our screens. My first thing I kind of say is the same way you would in person. We're just using different platforms. You
Mhm.
still want to be genuine. You still want to be interested, come from a point of curiosity.
Mhm.
You came to this event through the 10,000 Coffees platform that we offer for you at George Brown, which connects
Mhm.
students and alumni and employers or people in the industry to chat. So even,
Mhm.
you went through this platform to book and come to this event. So even with that event, you can start reaching out to people that may be willing to have a conversation because it is already designed for networking. So
Mhm.
that could be one possible way. Again, the trickiest part is getting someone's attention in an appropriate way. And once you have that, then things flow a bit better. We'll talk a
Mhm.
little bit more near the end about just some other digital ideas that we had as well. We were going to move on to kind of the informal type networking, unless someone has any questions about formal networking. Some people are not good at dealing with rejection. What's your advice on how to prevent rejection from continuing networking? Um, I guess for like what I would say, that maybe Lacey, you can chime in. It can be frustrating. We all know job search networking is frustrating.
Mhm.
It's not being rejected if someone doesn't respond. I always just in my head say, oh, they're just really busy.
Mhm.
Um, or, maybe you didn't try to get their attention in the correct way. Again, we need to be resilient. We need to be motivated. It is not rejection. Even if you don't get a job, it's not. It's just they chose someone else. Um, Again, if people do struggle with that, I work with a lot of students just trying to get them motivated back on track as well.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on that?
I would say when it comes to rejection in networking, like if you send out a message on LinkedIn or if you send an email or something like that and they don't follow up, certainly, as Calvin said, don't necessarily take it personally because it could be that they're just very, very busy. Especially after a formal networking event like a conference or something. Sometimes I don't get responses back from people until like a week later, especially if they were, a guest speaker or a keynote speaker. They're having tons of people flooding their inbox and it takes a while to go through and respond to everyone, so give them some time and space to do that. If you need to follow up in a week or two, but give them a little bit of space. Another thing that I have noticed from myself as somebody trying to network with somebody else, from somebody trying to network with me, and stories I've heard from employers is that one of the I would say common mistakes that people make when they're reaching out for the first time is not being specific enough about what they're looking for. So, if you're sending a message out to somebody on LinkedIn saying, hey, I noticed that you work in, career development. I was wondering if, we could have a chat about career development. They may, could I have 15 minutes? 15 minutes is not enough time to talk about career development. Whereas if perhaps your question is, I noticed that within the career development field, you have this specialization in this area. I'm really curious about whether or not that's a good fit for me. And I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions. Then they have a clear idea of how exactly can I support you? What is the information that would best help you in this conversation? What might my limitations be, and maybe who would I refer to? It just gives them more to go on. Uh, and when they have that, they're more likely to accept, respond, engage. So when we're talking about rejection, sometimes that is something to reflect on is, was I specific enough in my ask, or was it potentially too overwhelming or too general? And that's something that you can always refine moving forward.
Awesome. And I agree with you there. Sometimes it's like not enough or too much, and it's finding that balance. And sometimes I just have conversations with students about where to go. I usually say if you're reaching out to someone you don't know, you need to have the what, like the
Mhm.
common interest, that connection. And you say, hey, I see you went to George Brown, or I was at an event you were at. I'm a student right now, and I'd really love to just ask you a couple questions about how you started in your industry, or something like that.
Mhm.
LinkedIn is great because it shows you people's career paths. If you look in their profiles, you can usually always find a common connection.
Yeah, that alumni function is amazing.
So good, yeah. We could talk forever just about that. You were mentioning something, and I just wanted to share the story because it seems like the right moment.
Yeah.
You said someone reaching out to you, maybe asking for career development. So real life situation here. There was a student in the construction management program, and they had graduated, but were really interested in coaching and career coaching and reached out to me and said, oh, I graduated from George Brown Construction. I see you're a career advisor. I saw you took this program and I just wanted to ask you some questions. And because they were very specific and genuine, I was like, of course. And anyone who reaches out to me, if you are like just reaching out and I know how I can help you, I'm more inclined to help you. Anyways, this student given lots of tips and almost not mentoring, but in a sense, I said, ask me any questions you want. Was wondering whether to take this program or that program. And in the end, ended up becoming a career preparation teacher in the construction program, or like the program that they graduated from. And they're like, thanks, because of your information, I was able to, it ended up becoming a teacher. I mean, that's pretty cool to think they just asked me a question about my life and it still steered them in a direction of their own career goals. So
Mhm.
just wanted to use that example because it's a good one.
I love that example because it showcases, how you can use networking to get information that shows you whether or not you're on the right path or explore a path that maybe you weren't considering before, and can, kind of help you find those specific next steps that you need to get to where you want to go. I'm not sure if his initial intent was to become a teacher or if that's something that evolved through your conversation, but either way, I mean, he got so much out of that just by going and asking questions with intent and genuine curiosity, like we've been talking about. So not going into it not necessarily with, okay, I have to network, I have to ask networking questions. It was, as somebody who does coaching, I'm interested in coaching. Here's the questions I have right now about coaching. So kind of going away from that big scary word of networking and just looking at what do I actually need right now in terms of information.
Yeah. And I think most people genuinely want to help. They just need to know how. And I think sometimes when like you say, you ask too vague, so when someone says, oh, I need a job, what type of job? I'll take anything. And if you say I'll take anything, that means I don't know what I want
Yeah,
to
and it's
throw it
scary because it's like I
out
don't
there.
know where to start with that. And I've had employers tell me the exact same thing when they've received, resumes or LinkedIn messages that kind of allude to that of I'll take anything. It comes across a little bit overwhelming because it's like, well, I don't know what skills that you specialize in. I don't know what your experience is very well because everything's too general, and it's hard to place. So the more specific you can get with your ask or the information that you're looking for, or what you're looking for from that conversation, whether it be a mentorship or maybe a referral to somebody in their network, or just being very specific about that can help you, get a long way.
Mhm. And one thing I know is when you've connected with one person that is engaging in a conversation. So
Mhm.
for me, and know especially because of this pandemic and working from home, I have a very strange and broad personal professional network. So when I connect with a student or a friend or colleague that needs to know, if I know someone in my network and we have a good connection, I'm going to say, listen, do you want me to reach out to someone? One
Mhm.
person that's actually in our meeting right now, connected with a former schoolmate of mine that worked at Ryerson and now works at SFU, and they were able to have a great conversation. And usually once you get into someone's network, you could
Mhm.
you could be like, do you know anyone else I could talk to? And then you're broadening your network.
Mhm.
Same thing for some of you who might be a little um, anxious or not quite getting the opportunities you want to a stranger. See if there's someone in between that knows them and knows you. And that's why I always say, go to your friends and family, post on social media and say, does
Mhm.
anyone know anyone that works in marketing? I just really want to ask a few questions and just see what happens. You put the intention out, you receive that back.
Absolutely. And yeah, just to kind of put one last point on that, and then maybe we can move on because I do see we have another question in the chat. LinkedIn can be so handy for identifying connections between you and other people that you maybe didn't really know. Like just because I have an educational background in HR and I work now in career development doesn't mean that I don't know people you know, uh, in design or in construction or in community work. Like I have a very robust network, and if somebody's looking for information in that way, you could look at, is there somebody who does that work, and if I show up as a connection, then I would be able to send an introduction, or if there's somebody else in your network that has that in between. It's a lot easier to get a response from somebody when it's you have that mutual person in common. So definitely using your own network and checking out if you have somebody in common on LinkedIn, because it tells you right there if you have anyone in common with somebody with that job title or who works at that company, that you can utilize and say, hey, I'm really curious about that person's title or working at that person's company. Do you think you could do an introduction? Because I'd love to chat with them a little bit. Really helps get that conversation moving a little bit faster than if you're just, reaching out on your own.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I always tell students, if you met with me and I know someone, I know how difficult it can be, that first piece of trying to get the connection. It's like trying to get the
Mhm,
job interview, like that piece in between. So if I
mhm,
can help, I will. And I think
mhm.
most people are like that. They just need to know. And that's why I always
Yeah.
say being prepared to let people in your network already, in your I don't want to always say the word network, but within your community, within your circle of friends, family, coworkers, colleagues,
Mhm,
professors,
mhm,
always being ready with that intention. Sometimes we call it a pitch, sometimes we, elevator pitch or something like that. But really what it is just at any moment being able to communicate sort of where you're at. So if it was me, I might say, well, my name is Calvin. I'm a career advisor, work at George Brown, and I'm always looking for employers to come talk to our students. So if you're ever interested in talking to students or even
mhm.
come and do a presentation, I would happy to host you. Sometimes that happens, and it has happened even at like a house party, like where I'm with my friends, just enjoying myself, and
Yeah.
I meet someone new, and it's helped me when I was doing my coaching to get clients. It has helped me get employers for certain things. We had a women in construction event last year, just before the pandemic ended, and one of the engineers that we brought on was like through a friend of friends that I go dancing with, like nothing related to engineering, but
Right.
they were like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And so I brought them onto campus to be part of a great event for International Women's Day last year for women in construction and trades. So like you never know where these moments are coming from. But had I not been ready to say, "Oh, we're doing this event, I need someone," at
Mhm.
that moment, and then maybe give my business card and then say, "Okay, let's go back to having fun now." But I have that card, and I'm going to
Yeah.
follow up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to like informal networking, where you're just kind of having conversations that are like, oh, there's potential here. Let's continue, being at our friend's party or continue with your dental appointment, whatever it is, where that conversation came up, just going, oh, there's potential here. When it's the right moment, let's follow up and dig a little deeper into this, to figure out if there's potential there. There's so much opportunity to create something amazing for yourself just by going there a little bit, even in your own sort of personal circles. um, I know when I was a student, so to go all the way back, because I every single job that I had as a student, and then even this job that I have now, I got with the help of you. Every job that I've had at school was through networking, and the very first one that I got was very informal. I was in my very first semester of my HR program, and a student that I had befriended noticed that I had really good notes and wound up being a student who was requesting note taking support from Accessible Learning Services, and specifically asked if I could be their note taker. Didn't want a note taker they already had on hand. They wanted me specifically. And that was just because through conversation, through, sharing notes, through talking about the topics, they just thought, oh, those are notes that I really clearly understand and would help me. And because of that, I wound up holding that job for like a year and a half, long after that student and I, we were still friends, but we weren't in classes anymore together. I continued on to that role, and that role helped me to get my next role and my next one. um, and that was just through hanging out with each other at lunchtime outside of class time, or studying for tests, at 7, 8 o'clock at night, as you do when you're a student, and finding an opportunity there. So there's not, as you said, just the formal uh, events where you can find these opportunities. They can happen anywhere.
Yeah. And like I say, it's just always being ready. And it's not like you're being pushy. It's just like
Hmm.
you're talking about a bit about yourself. Oh, really? You work in this industry? I'd love to know
Hmm.
more.
Yeah.
Now, I just saw the question and I know it was a little while back. So I want to make
Yeah.
sure we get to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'll read it out and then you can respond.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So how do you follow up after the first contact with someone? A professional in the field I want to join replied to my request to connect, but then how should I follow up after that initial inquiry for a co-op?
So a little bit to unpack there. If your first initial outreach to them was asking for a co-op, and they accepted, but they haven't said anything yet, then your first one would just be a demonstration of thanks for connecting and for their time. You would want to try and inject a little bit of mutual benefit there, maybe through sharing a resource or um, perhaps just focusing on the relationship build before going back to the ask for a co-op. I'm not sure how tight the timeline is for you, but requesting a co-op without trying to establish that relationship really feels one-sided when it comes to networking. So if you haven't started to try and build that rapport with them yet, I would say go back to that first, and see if you can get the conversation going. If they've added you but haven't really said anything back, that would probably be where I would say to start, because you want to build that rapport before going back to that ask. Um, Calvin, what do you think?
Um,
Anything to
I,
add on there?
I completely agree. And I mean, this is the thing about it is that people want to help you once they already know you and have kind of an investment. So that's why we say from day one of your program, get started, start
Hmm.
connecting to people.
Hmm.
Even if it's,
I love seeing first semester folks in this group today. That's amazing.
that's awesome. Like it just, the sooner you kind of start. If you're looking for co-op now and you're reaching out, again, as you said, it's valuing people's time and showing appreciation, easy commitment. So I just have a couple questions
Hmm.
that I'd love for you to ask about co-op. The great thing is about you first semester people is you can start reaching out to people and you get to say, I'm not looking for a job or co-op right now. I just want to have some subject matter experts or people in my industry to ask questions to. Would you mind? Um, LinkedIn has groups that you could go on. So if you're looking for a co-op, and let's say it's in project management, you could join a project management group on LinkedIn, or you could go on
Hmm.
to 10K copies and see if there's any project managers there. And in the group, you could cast out to the whole group, hey, I'm looking for a co-op in Toronto, and I just wanted to know if anyone had any insight. Some
Hmm.
of these groups have upward of 50,000 people in them. You'd think one person could answer
Yeah.
a question.
Absolutely. And as I've certainly seen from the last couple of weeks of requests for events and even networking events that I see, we have Marina here. We had an event recently. There's a number of folks out there who, even if they're not hiring right now, are committing their time to going out and doing mentorship events, doing networking events where they can share their insight, perhaps introduce you to someone. There are people who are actively volunteering their time to try and help students and new grads with meeting the people they need to make that next step. So I know when we're thinking about networking for the first time, and especially if we haven't really gotten to a place where we're confident with it, networking feels like a big ask, like we're kind of out there with our hands out going, help me. But there are folks out there who are literally just beyond their day to day. They want to give something back, and there are those champions out there. We just need to figure out how do we connect you to them so that they can send you those introductions or send you that job posting, that came their way because they're in industry. And building rapport with those champions, with those mentors, is a great way um, for you to tap into that. But I like what you mentioned earlier about easy commitments, because as we've talked about, going too general makes it hard for folks to commit to how they can help you, and even on your end, making sure that you follow up. One of the biggest things that I've been told from folks who are mentors or employers is that they get this big ask or a general ask, and even if they're willing to kind of take it on, the person never follows up, and so the conversation just kind of ends and the opportunity never comes to fruition. So if you stick to easy commitments, then it tends to not be so big that it feels for them undoable, but for you it's easier to follow up on and actually put those thoughts and ideas into action and follow through.
Correct. And yeah, like I always say, easy commitments to students, or it's I just have a few couple questions.
Yeah.
Great hook, kind of in a lead in is I just have a couple questions about your own career path or something, and then
Yeah.
thank you, that was great. And then be respectful of time. Always show your appreciation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Thank you so much. If I have more questions, can I reach out to you, or what would be the best way to do that? And they might say, "Oh, reach out to me anytime if you've made
Right.
a good impression." So now I know that we're mostly online right now and reaching out. So again,
Yeah.
we talk about LinkedIn a lot. We've got the 10K Coffees platform. Uh,
Hmm.
you might be engaging on social media. There's lots of different ways.
Yeah.
Some kind of tips. I'm just looking kind of at our time, and I want to make sure we have
Yeah,
time for Q&A as well.
for sure.
But here's a few things when I think about, say, LinkedIn or something. Don't just click connect.
Yes.
Many people do that, but I need context. From my own personal point of view, I need context into why I'm inviting you into my network. And
Yeah.
even if you're just a student, explain, like, I saw you do a presentation. It was really interesting. I
Hmm.
like some of the ideas you had, and I'd love to be part of your network. Um, we can see when it's a copy pasted sort of template to be genuine again. Um, Make sure even little things like this, be careful. If your headline and your name have grammar problems or not capitalized, it doesn't look professional either. So you want to present your best to get a good impression. Again, I'm usually of the mindset, if you just click connect and don't tell me why, I
Hmm.
won't connect with you. And that might,
Yeah.
again, if then you have to find another strategy to reach out. But
Hmm.
really, when you're reaching out to people in industry, um, just be genuine and to the point, short,
Yeah.
sweet, genuine with the ask. Like, what is it that you're connecting with me for?
Yeah. I completely agree. I when it comes to LinkedIn specifically, I can tell the difference between somebody who's asking to connect with me because they're genuinely curious versus somebody who's connecting with me because it's for an assignment. Do you know what I mean? The way that messaging comes across is very, very different. And so when you're sending out that request, being genuine is absolutely the most top of mind thing that you want to um, be framing that introduction around. So whether you're reaching out to them to ask for an informational interview or just to get connected, you're wanting to make sure that you frame it a little bit around, here's who I am right now, here's what I'm doing or the information that I'm looking for, and here's what I'm hoping to um, to gain out of this connection. And it needs to be, again, not just serving yourself, it needs to be mutual in some capacity.
Mhm.
So if I was reaching out to Calvin, I'd say, "Hey, Calvin, I see that you're also a career advisor at George Brown. I, have been in this role for a while and was interested in your how you approach advising students in the construction programs. Would you have some time to answer a couple of questions that I have in the next couple weeks?" And that is very specific in who I am, what I'm doing, or the information I'm looking for, and what I'm hoping for from that connection, from that conversation. And then, Calvin can see what specialized information he can provide, the scope of what he would be able to offer to me is very clear to him. And he can kind of plan for that, right? When folks are being asked to do something, they want to be able to put some pre-work into that too. They want to prep for you. They want to put their best foot forward because it's networking for them too. So the more specific you can get about that, the better. So one thing that we often talk about in our presentations is when we're talking about don't just connect. When you're using the mobile version of LinkedIn, it doesn't necessarily give you the opportunity to send that message first. If you send a request via your phone, make sure you send that message right afterwards. You don't want that request or that connection to happen and then just hang there. So make sure you're sending out that message of, who you are, what you're doing, or what information you're looking for, and the ask right away after they accept, so that you can get that conversation going. I know there's some areas of social media where just having a bunch of connections and a bunch of likes is helpful, but not necessarily in a networking context. It's more about quality over quantity in this context.
Yeah, and agree. I've had students before. One said, "I think I made a mistake when I first got LinkedIn. I just clicked connect, connect, and I have hundreds of people in my network. But now I'm looking for a co-op, and I don't know what to do with them. So we had
Yeah.
to come up with a plan and strategy. Like, okay, well, let's go through and let's see some of it. Let's look at their profiles, see which
Hmm.
ones might be worth reaching out to, even if it was 2 years later, and say,
Right.
hey, I connected with you a while back. Find that common interest,
Hmm.
and start trying to engage again." Um,
Yeah.
Again, everything we're talking about here, this is what we do as our jobs. We're career advisors, and I love just being able to brainstorm and come up with different ways of reaching out to people.
Hmm.
One thing I usually say to most people is there's always, what else? What
Hmm.
else? What else can I be doing? I Many students even come up and say, "Oh, but I don't want to bug someone." Again, if you're genuine and to the point, you're not bugging them,
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
not, and you're kind of controlling your own career narrative by reaching out in a genuine way and say, "Oh, I'd love to touch base on this." And I've had many students say this. Actually, one of my best friends said this yesterday for a opportunity with a film production. But it's like, um, like, what I don't want to come across as annoying or pushy. And I said, well, if you don't message them, you know what their response is. Nothing.
Hmm.
So, if you're struggling to find a way to word things or how to approach, come book an appointment with one of us. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
we're here to help with that as well. So really, if that's something that you might have a reluctance, if you're an introvert too, Lacey can give you some great introverted strategies on how to network.
Have lists and lists and lists of templates. How to connect with somebody you've never talked to before. How to follow up with somebody you met at an event. How to follow up with somebody you got introduced to from somebody already in your network. There's lots of suggestions out there. I would say, even if for those of you who are feeling a little bit motivated and start looking for some of those samples on your own, definitely use them as a guideline. Where I would say stay away from is using them as a fill in the blank template. We've been talking this whole session about being genuine and injecting yourself into it. Certainly use them as a guideline of, oh, okay, I can see where they're talking about their self, where they're talking about their experience and how they're framing their ask. But for me, it's going to look like this, right? So using them, as I said, kind of a goalpost for you to use, but not as a here's my script now that I'm going to use for every single person I connect with.
Yes. And I think, you said it, I said it, be genuine. I could talk about cover letters the same way. There's
Yep.
so much we could talk about. I am looking at the time and I want to
Yep.
be respectful of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh,
Let's get to some
there's,
other questions.
if there's any other questions, by all means, put them in the chat. Um, I learned that on mobile, if you go directly to someone's profile, there's an option to add a message with your connection request when you select the more button. Go to personalize invite. I'd love to
Hmm.
connect with you, Lacey, and chat more about introverted approaches to networking. Awesome, thanks, Tan. So maybe they've changed some of the things. Again, with LinkedIn, there's always little bits of updating. I just
Hmm.
know I've done workshops before and someone's tried to connect with me in the class. And right
Hmm.
after I will say, oh, if you're gonna connect with me, send a message. And someone will go, oh, I did it on my phone and I missed that.
Yeah, it's too late. Yeah.
Well, we were there in person, so I would help out. But
Yeah.
again, so that's great to know. And Tam, I guess you're going to go see um, Lacey for some introverted approaches.
Yes.
Um,
Introverts unite distantly. It's going to be
awesome.
great.
Um, do we have any other questions right now? Because I mean, if not, we're here. We're always here to help you in any capacity. Um, leave it for a sec if you want to ask a question.
Yeah. Or even if there's anything that we touched on today that you're like, I would love to start this. I haven't done this before, and that's something I want to work on. Let us know. Like, based on today, is there anything that you're like, oh, I want to try that? Let us know in the chat. We love knowing what's been helpful or what's been insightful or something new that that you didn't think of before. Like, definitely let us know.
Yeah, awesome. So I just put the Linktree link in the chat as well, just in case you haven't come to our services, which I really hope you all have. But if not, that Linktree will get you through to our virtual career fair, how to book virtual career center, how to book appointments. And do you put the survey in or the workshop one? What do you think, Lacey?
Yeah, let's put the workshop one
Okay,
in.
I
So
got
folks,
that copied and
if folks
pasted.
loved this, they can let us know. If there's something they want to see us do differently, they can let us know.
Perfect. And again, yeah, and Natalie mentions on all of us in the career team, you can also, when you email us, you can see that link and information in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are trying to do our best to make sure that we are reaching out to you and supporting you as best we can. This is our first time running one of these sessions, so we would love your feedback. I put a link there, so it's Lacey and Calvin, whoever you put on there. Let us know, if this was useful or suggestions. We were thinking maybe next time we'll just talk strictly on online networking. But give us any feedback. We would really appreciate that. It only takes like a minute to fill it out, and it would really help us out as a team to make sure we are coming up with ways of getting you information and that you feel supported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any other questions.
Me
So
neither.
just because of time, I think we can wrap up now. And just want to say
Absolutely.
thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you. It means a lot just to know that we've set this up for the first time and people came in engaged. It will be recorded and we will be housing it somewhere. So keep a lookout for that. Anyone who's registered, I'm sure we can reach out to you. Cydia, you're welcome. No, thank you for joining as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Marina,
Okay.
everybody who joined, thank you again. This has been a really amazing first session. I'm really excited, and I hope that we have you all join our future sessions. There's so much to talk about on this subject. There's no way we can talk about everything related to networking in a 1-hour session. So I do hope that you join us for future sessions. Please connect with us if you would like more individualized support. We're always around to help. Thank you so much. Please stay safe and have a great day.
Great. And thank you, Melanie, our interpreter, for coming in. We really appreciate you supporting us as well. So have a great day. Enjoy yourselves, everyone.
Bye, everyone.